Westminster's Glenbrook Ravine Park border grass seems innocuous from afar. It is hidden behind a large apartment and elders' center complex by a modest metal gate with a sign. Dog walkers and youngsters seldom notice. For over 70 years, it was known as Boot Hill, and at least 43, or 47, or 62, depending on who you ask, condemned inmates from the adjacent, long-demolished provincial penitentiary were buried there. Child molesters, murderers, petty criminals, bullies, and BC Doukhobors were among them. Several of their bones are in unmarked graves and stone markers with prisoner numbers. Boot Hill presumably received its first body about 1913, although the BC Penitentiary had been the province's first highest security facility since the late 1870s. The ravine was home to a park and government house before construction. This hill would make a beautiful old park. In 1859, Colonel Moody wrote the governor, "I defend people in parks beautiful glen and valley. I hope you like Queen's Ravine." In his 1879 report, the exasperated federal penitentiary inspector wrote that, "It needs no argument to show how incongruous, how repugnant to good taste, leaving aside the incentive to breach of discipline and escape, it were sick to have games, music, and dancing and other amusements, with all the attendant boisterous mirth, because prisoners could see park picnics. Unclaimed criminals' remains were donated to medical colleges or deposited in Douglas Road cemetery sites before Boot Hill, which was expensive and time-consuming, requiring guarded inmates to dig through pine roots for 3 days. Gin O. Kim's 1914 gravestone is the cemetery's oldest, although Joseph Smith and Herman Wilson were buried unmarked the year before. Smith, a small, stocky 24-year-old sailor, was serving 10 years for theft and violence in 1911 after dumping ammonia on a Main Street jewelry shop owner. Smith and Wilson murdered a prison guard during a jailbreak, which the New Westminster British Columbian termed one of the most skillful and dangerously near successful attempts at jail delivery that has ever been recorded. After defeating 3 guards, the couple was caught in a gunfight outside the external gate that killed J.H. Joynson and badly wounded Wilson. On January 31, 1913, Smith was hung in the yard, where Joynson fell, and Wilson died of a neck gunshot after jail authorities refused medical assistance. The British Columbian reported that, although physically a midget of a man, he displayed the same fearless front and iron nerve that had characterized his whole career, and more recently in his terrible attempt to escape from prison, in which he killed his guard. Throughout his trial and solitary confinement, until his last moment, the newspaper stated Smith was placed in his last resting place in a far corner of the penitentiary grounds where the world will soon forget him. Many Boot Hill prisoners committed suicide or contracted sickness. A 72-year-old petty criminal with 45 convictions died naturally in 1967. Boot Hill is a favorite getaway because convicts buried dead and carved headstones. According to the British Columbian, prisoner Philip Hopkins utilized his labor assignment to escape into the thick forest near the graves in March 1913. The gentleman bandit, Bill Miner, fled the prison's most renowned breakout in 1907 via the same underbrush before it was transformed into a cemetery. Miner was never discovered in Canada, despite province-wide searches. Miner's accomplice, Louis Colquhoun, died of TB in 1911 and may have been at Boot Hill. His body and memorial are gone. Famous Boot Hill inmate Suk Sias, prisoner Dorny 999, isn't in jail. Laich Quil Tach. First Nations member Sias from Greenpoint, BC, was twice convicted of murder and manslaughter. The cemetery contained his remains since 1933, but severe rains in 1955 undermined the gully and uncovered his coffin. In 2004, Campbell River historian Candy Lee Chickite found, disinterred, and returned Sias' corpse to his homeland after lengthy study. Other poor individuals die at BC Penitentiary besides Sias. Three 1933 Doukhobor prisoners died, including the 4214 James Tarasov. The mid-20th century Doukhobor community protested police with public nudity and burning. To protest obligatory public education, over 600 Doukhobors were convicted of public nudity in 1931. To accommodate huge Doukhobor immigration, special prisons were erected. Doukhobors had Agassiz Mountain Prison by 1962. A 110-year-old BC penitentiary was dismantled in 1980. The jail is almost gone save for Boot Hill, administration buildings, and the Gatehouse, now a restaurant. Former facility accountant Tony Martin saved the Boot Hill victims' identities by retrieving all historical documents from the garbage. During the process, I was told by a couple of friends that there were all kinds of things being sent to the dump, which they didn't think should be, Martin said, in a 2009 Old Courthouse, John Howard Society, Anthony Martin, BC Penitentiary Collection. Remember, I advised sidetracking, piggery barning, and checking on them later. Saved as much as possible from the landfill. Martin kept prison furniture, mug photographs, letters, and decades of official paperwork. Boot Hill was overgrown and neglected until 2018, when new Westminster historians requested the city to protect it.